So last year I held a podcast conference at a school gymnasium like 8 miles down the road, 10 miles down the road. And I was so happy to get my first set of speakers for this conference very early on. In fact, Anthony Minaya was the first one I think I reached out to, and the first one that said yes. He didn't even question it at all. So I was so thankful. And then Jeff Bradury reached out, and he was like, hey, I want to be a part of this. I was like, all right, I got somebody enthusiastic. I love that because I'm trying to be enthusiastic about it. I need people that are passionate about it and enthralled with the idea of doing it. So thank you both for doing that. And then Dave Jackson. I got to thank Kathleen Kelly, who is, I thought I saw her in the room over here, for pointing Dave Jackson my way, or me to Dave Jackson's way, because it is Dave Jackson's world. We're just borrowing time in it. And he did a really awesome speech. If you watch the promo video on the website, you can see he's pointing at like very frantically about all these podcasts that use the words "on fire." Everything's on fire. The world is on fire. So last year they gave awesome featured. They were all featured speakers. They featured talks. And this year I wanted to bring them back to do a panel, since they all have different expertise, from live streaming to podcasting to social media. And then Rob stepped into the picture. If you don't know who Rob is, he's from Spreaker. That's his current company that he's with. But he's been podcasting for how many years, Rob?
Since 2004.
Wow. Since 2004. So we got a lot of experience up in this region over here. Or not over here, but over here. And so I'm super thankful to have them be here and to be on this panel. I'm looking forward to learning. I hope you are too. So I'm going to turn the mic over to our host, Rob. So let's give it up for this panel right here.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. And this is a fantastic event. I'm really happy to be coming out here from Seattle. So it was a shock to come out to the 97 degrees and the humidity, but I definitely enjoy it, and it's been great to see so many great podcasters here. And so I wanted to just say thank you for Joe and putting all this together. I know this is a second-year event, but I want to be very supportive of events like this because I think they're very, very important. And I'm also really honored to be moderating this panel because these guys are a bunch of great content producers and podcasters. And so we're going to spend about 40 minutes talking about community and creativity and those kind of topics. And just to let you know, I'm the head of content at Spreaker, and Spreaker is a podcast hosting platform, and we also do live streaming as well. So that's currently what we're doing right now. We're live streaming all this on Spreaker. So you'll be able to, if you wanted to tweet about it, about how this is all live streaming right now, you're certainly welcome to do that. But Spreaker's been around for about 6 years, so it's been involved. I also do 2 podcasts myself. I do one called the New Media Show, which actually is a live video show as well as an audio and video podcast. It's actually, I think it's like airing right now. My co-host is doing it. And then the Spreaker Live Show, which actually I do on Spreaker. And these are all shows about podcasting. So if you want to learn a little bit more about podcasting, kind of from guys that have been doing this stuff for a really long time, those are 2 great shows to tune into to learn some tips and tricks and things like that. And a lot of the guys down here also do similar types of things as well. So let's kind of jump in. Like I said, this topic is about creating content, creativity, and community, and building that community. And hopefully we can get a lot of great questions from you to the panelists, and we can kind of create this dialogue about how to improve your shows. So let's just talk really quick. Mr. Anthony Minaya is sitting. Minaya, excuse me. He's a business coach and a social media specialist. He also creates a lot of film and video online, and he's a video storyteller. And so, I don't know. Why don't you tell us a bit more about the things that you're doing?
Can you hear me? Perfect. How's everybody doing, by the way? Yeah. You guys are alive or kind of dead? Like, entrepreneur, video I produce videos, I produce content, create films, social media beast. And yeah, it's pretty much, I don't know what to say.
All right.
Social media beast.
Social media maven. There you go. Jeff Bradury, who's been a long-time podcaster, does a lot of video in the education sector. So it's great to have you here with us as well. I know you've got some terrific announcements that you can make about some of the success that you've had. But I think that the interesting thing what you've done is you've focused on a very kind of niche area, but you've also done video and audio. And you've achieved, some status with like places like Google and Microsoft as an educator podcaster. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about up to date with what's going on with what you're doing right now?
Sure. First of all, thank you guys all for being here. My name is Jeff Bradury. 5 years ago, I started the TeacherCast podcast. It turned into the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network. Currently, I have about 9 shows on iTunes, everything from the TeacherCast show to a live show we call the Tech Educator Podcast. I'm now the official podcaster for the New Jersey Educators Association, the state's largest teachers association. I do a show that was kind of inspired by Dave called Educational Podcasting Today, which teaches teachers how to do podcasting and WordPress websites. I also do a show called Ask the Tech Coach, also kind of inspired by this guy over here. And I guess I can officially say, if this isn't going out live, I'll let you guys be the first to hear it. Starting this week, I'll be the official podcaster for Microsoft Education.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. So how many years have you been podcasting and doing this to achieve something like that?
TeacherCast officially turned 5 years old in July, okay. And I guess you could say a year and a half before that I was co-hosting on some various shows. Okay.
And Mr. Dave Jackson down there in the end of the row, he's prolific podcaster, great guy, and does the School of Podcasting show for many, many years. You started that in 2005, right, Dave?
2005. Back in the day.
Back in the day. So he's been doing it for 11 years. He's had over 1 million downloads. He's doing other shows, too. Ask the Podcast Coach that he actually does on Spreaker. And a new podcast he started is Because of My Podcast. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, Dave?
Yeah, with that show, it's a new one. If you can answer that question, definitely come up and see me. I got a portable recorder here just to get that. If you can answer the question, because of my podcast, blank happened, I want you on my show. But yeah, so I've been doing it since 2005. I basically help people massage their message. I help you tackle the technology, face your fears. A lot of people want to wet their pants when they try to podcast. It's not really that scary. And then just flatten the learning curve. And I'm always looking to... one of the reasons I'm here is to listen. I think that would be, when we talk about being creative and building your audience, the first thing you have to know is what does your audience want? So I come to these things as much to talk, and it's great to talk, but I really come here to listen. So.
Plus, Dave also works for Libsyn. So if you're hosting with Libsyn, he's a great contact to talk to on that as well.
Because of my podcast, I got a job at Libsyn, so that's one.
So. Plus, he's also a former director of podcasting for the New Media Expo. Yeah. So he's been really, really helping in the community for a really long time. So, well, let's just jump into it here and talk a little bit about community and creativity and how those things have converged for all you guys in creating the content. But I want to start on with Anthony. You're not currently a podcaster, but you have a lot of experience in building engaging brands and creating video. And a lot of podcasters love to create video with what they do as well. Is there any tips that you can share of things that you've learned about how to use creativity in video to help support, like maybe an audio podcast?
Well, hello? So one of the tips I feel that works for many of you, can work for many of you, is authenticity. And here's why I say that. I know you guys probably looking for technical stuff and scenes and cuts and things like that, what camera, but the truth is being authentic, having a personality is what's going to help you stand out more than everybody else. If you look at the podcast world or whatever it is, what topic you guys are speaking, how many people are in your field? Like, who are the people how many people are talking about the same stuff? many, right? Unless you're the only one, then you're a beast. But you know, so many people talking about the same thing. So many people look the same. So many people sound the same. So the only way you're going to stand out is being authentic and having personality. Being yourself turned up to 1,000. If that makes sense. So you can have a video, you can have no video. Doesn't matter how many people have videos. So many people have videos. So I think it's about being authentic, and also creativity is why we're up here talking about creativity. But how can you do something that no one else is doing? How can you innovate and change the game a little bit, right? Just don't be another podcaster. Like I hear so many podcasts, and I'm like, boring. You know what I mean? Like, people, well, so today we have this guest, and it's very boring, very lame. And I'm just like, how can you add some flavor to this? How can you switch it up with some creativity, some behind-the-scenes type of stuff? How can you create some short films? You know, how can you, just change the game? Just don't only be a podcaster. I think having that mindset of being the best in the world at what you do in your field is what you should be thinking about on a day-to-day basis. How can I be the best in the world? Right here, I'm trying to be the best speaker that this entire event. No, I love these guys. I love all of you that spoke up here. But I feel like, how can I be the best speaker up here? What can I say that can change that one person's life, and they can go out and say, you know what? I'm going to kill this. I'm going to be the best at what I do. I'm going to be the best podcaster. I'm going to be the best. Because being the best is never an actual fact. No matter how many downloads, millions and millions of downloads you guys have, somebody may say, oh, I don't like them, they're not the best, right? So being the best is never an actual fact. It's a mentality. So I think if you guys think about it and say, I'm going to be the best at what I do, I'm going to change the game a little bit, I'm going to be authentic, I'm going to be myself, turned up to 1,000, I think you guys will have something interesting going on.
So how does that actually translate into what content that you're producing on a day-to-day basis? I mean, is it an energy that you bring to it, or is it some sort of an angle that you're looking for?
It's a mindset, man. I think, how can you what kind of reaction you want from your audience? You know, like content is great. That's the entire thing. The content, if your content sucks, no matter what you do, nobody's going to listen, nobody's going to download your stuff. But I feel that if your content's great, everything's good, but for some reason you're not standing out, it's because you look the same. You like everyone else. You look like everyone else. You sound like everyone else. You're talking like everyone else. You're talking about the same thing like everybody else. How can you bring your own unique personality? And it shows, like, when you're thinking about putting out content, the best content online, you start thinking, how can I, what kind of reaction do you want from people? Do you want people to get inspired, to get motivated? Do you want to educate people? You know what I'm saying? And that's how, hopefully I answered the question there.
Okay. No, that's fantastic. Is there any other thoughts that Dave?
Well, he's talking
Jeff
about being authentic, and you just have to be, because almost any time I see a copy of anything, it's never as good. Anybody here remember the 80s? Right? More Than Words, right? That came out, and it was like, wow, a power ballad. So then Warrant came out with Heaven Isn't Too Far Away. Okay, great. And then Dokken came out with I'm Alone Again. And every one you're just going, ugh. And the next one, like the first one was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Sounds a little bit like the Beatles maybe even. And then another ripoff and another. And by the end, it was just like, ugh. So when you start Librarians on Fire, it's just, underpants on, it's just not going to work. So, and that's where authenticity, be yourself. I mean, it's weird, and you kind of got to roll with what your audience wants. So, like, I inherited a cat in December who decided he was going to be on my show no matter how many times I threw him out of the room.
Oh, yeah, cats love microphones, don't they?
Yeah, Bernie,
they just love
exactly.
microphones.
And I swear, he's almost ready for his own show now. Because everybody's like, hey, Dave, really loved the episode with Jen Briney. That was great, blah, 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 blah. By the way, more Bernie. So just be authentic, and nobody else has Bernie. And so that, it's making somebody, you can't get that anyplace else. And like he said, don't be boring. That's really, Glenn the Geek is a friend of mine. He does a whole horse radio network. And that's his motto, don't be boring. So for me, when I go to turn on the microphone, it's like, what am I going to talk about today that's going to inspire my listener to tell one of their friends? Because in the end, that's how your podcast grows.
Yeah, if only cats could talk, right?
Oh, my cat talks. I just don't understand.
Be a number
I don't
one
speak
podcast.
Frowr. Yeah, so.
Jeff, so you do a lot of video too. What do you do in yours? I know you're very focused on education and trying to reach those teachers out there, but is there an aspect of this creativity that you focus on when you create your shows?
You know, I think one of the things that sets TeacherCast apart is that we do look different. How many remember when Google Hangouts first came out? And then everybody got on Google Hangouts for a podcast. And then you realize that you have all these people that are creating a show on Google Hangouts and suddenly they're podcasters. No, you kind of do a thing on Google. And I'm not trying to insult me, but we went completely 180 with that, and we partnered with some software companies that do live broadcasting. So when you look at the average teacher show at that time, they all looked the same, acted the same. They're bad lighting, they're bad everything. I kind of looked around and said, all right, I'm going to build a studio here. And I didn't call myself a podcaster. I started calling myself an internet broadcaster and got involved with the guys like the Tech Buzz and GFQ Network and the IAIB. And you know, it just looked different than everybody else. And you kind of realize there's a few things to creativity here. And you know, the first rule of podcasting is if you have a microphone, you're an expert. And if you have a nice visual, then you are more of an expert. And I think a lot of the success that we've had, I say we, but the success that we've had on TeacherCast is it just looks different. The same thing. It's not just creating a show. It's doing the behind-the-scenes stuff, getting it in there. I don't have cats. I do have 2-year-old triplets. So occasionally they get into the show at the same time with all of this stuff. But it really is just, you know, what can you do differently? Don't be another On Fire show. Don't be another Google Hangout show. Be completely different. And if that does mean doing a live show with all the lower thirds flying around, and you know, when we do a live show, I've got 5 machines, and you've been on the show a couple times. I've got 5 machines in front of me, and it's like you're in the middle of this aircraft. Well, no one's doing that stuff, and so it looks differently. And then you attract the sponsors, and you can talk about things. And it's just a matter of you know, the creativity flows within. My creativity comes because I'm an orchestra teacher or former, I keep saying former orchestra teacher and music conductor. So I'm used to being able to stand on a podium with an entire 100 and some piece orchestra and dive the craziness around. I've taken the stage, the podium, the showmanship, and I've put it into a podcasting studio. So maybe we can get the babies and your cat together.
That'd be
There
it.
you go.
Great show.
Babies and cats on fire? No, forget that.
Maybe not.
Yeah, that is a whole different kind of meaning. Dave, I wanted to just really kind of praise you for the type of podcaster you are, because I think being on this panel is really appropriate for you, because I believe that you're a master at connecting with audiences. You bring a lot of humor to your shows, and you like to tinker with stuff. And I think it's always fascinating to listen to you dig into the podcasting tools and tear them apart and analyze them and talk about them. And I think it's really interesting to have you talk about that and what you go through to produce the kind of content that you produce on a week-over-week basis, and using all these tools and connecting with your audience at a really deep level as well, with your really dry humor too.
Yeah,
and self-depreciating humor, I might say too.
It's a lot of work, and part of it was I'm not afraid to try stuff, because there's a running gag on my show. Ryan K. Parker from foodcraftsman.com. I was interviewing the one time. We were talking about what happens if you've stopped doing a show and I now want to bring it back. And he said, nobody's going to punch you in the face if you just bring it back. And I was like, that's brilliant. And we always worry that, I think it's our ego, that if I do this, all of my listeners, and I'm like, okay, let's easy there. You know, there's not that many listeners maybe. And if it is, who cares? They're not going to punch you in the face. So I remember once I said, I cut out all my ums and you knows and everything else that I didn't want in the show. And I said, I'm going to put these at the end of the show just to see if anybody listens at the end of the show. And sure enough, I got a couple of people. That was really cool. Oh, my God, you're human. And I was like, really? People didn't think I was human? Okay, well, they need to know I'm messing up just like anybody else. And so anytime, my background is in teaching. I taught in the corporate world for forever. I used to teach people how to surf the internet. And so anytime I make a mistake, as much as I would love to just hide that, I'm like, hey, guess what I did? I share it with my audience, and this is how this mistake happened. This is how it's not going to happen in the future. So it's all about educating my audience. And I'm sure somewhere along the line that's probably cost me business because it makes me look like, well, I don't want that guy touching my stuff. He makes mistakes all the time. But on the other hand, I have other people that like, I love the fact, if we go back to authenticity, even though I can't say that word, people will do that because they feel like they know me. It makes me more human. And again, I'm not a huge gearhead. I'm kind of like, once you get your microphone, please check that off and move on to making good content, because I have so many people that are like, okay, I've got an ATR 2100, but should I get the Heil or should I go with the RE? You've got a microphone. Content, move on. Yeah. And so, but on the other hand, I have a lot of my audience that loves to talk gear. So again, it goes back to what does your audience want? So, and then I explain them in really technical terms. Like I just reviewed this Tascam unit, and you can listen to it. I go, wow, this thing's buggy as crap. That was my review. You know, it was like, so that's, and people love the fact that I'm talking about, well, it's the 48-bit megahertz thing, and if you tune that in, it's like, no, this thing is buggy as crap, and I might buy it in a year and a half, because if it worked, it was really cool, but I couldn't get it to work with any of my software. So I don't get too technical. I try to realize that my audience is, you know, the stay-at-home mom that, you know, just learned how to program her VCR 10 years ago, is scared to death of technology. And that's when I say things like, have you ever been in the car and the phone rang? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, what'd you do? Well, you turned down the radio, right? Okay, you can mix audio. Have you ever uploaded a picture to Facebook? Yeah, all the time. Okay, well, then you can upload a file to Libsyn. Okay, have you ever worked in Microsoft Word? I do it every day. Okay, well, then you can work in WordPress. And that's where they start to see, oh, maybe I can do this. So just don't be afraid. And if you do something that's horrible, I've done something. I'll give you an example of something that just blew up in my face. I recorded an episode. It was my birthday. And I wanted a Kindle. This is back when they were like $300. And I'm like, hey, it's my birthday. If you've ever gotten anything from my show, why don't you chip in and help Dave buy a Kindle? Which people did. The bad news is it was also like 2 days, like right after I recorded that episode and put it out anyway, a tsunami hit. And people really needed money. And so here's everybody going, these people have lost their homes. And meanwhile, Dave's over here going, I need a $300 Kindle. Didn't really make me look the most compassionate person. And it's when I got a pretty negative review on iTunes, people saying, wow, that was kind of not, and I was like, yeah, I guess I should have maybe watched the news a little more before I released that episode. The interesting thing is about that, and I always use that as an example, the guy didn't unsubscribe, though. He probably tuned back in to go, well, what did this idiot say this week? And he actually, his contact me said, if you notice, you can't find that review in there anymore. And I'm like, well, why is that? He goes, because I changed it. He goes, that was really stupid, but I kept listening. And so don't get freaked out when you have a bad review. I mean, if somebody, let's say you drive, I'm new to Pennsylvania, I could drive out today and cut somebody off, and maybe they wave at me a certain way with a certain thing. I'm not going to stop driving because that guy doesn't like the way I drive. So don't be afraid, and you know, it's like a recipe. You try it, move on.
So does the concept of authenticity, is that something that somebody can learn, or is that something that just comes from confidence in doing these things? I don't know, Anthony, what do you think?
I think it comes from studying yourself. Now, what I see a lot of people do is they say, okay, I'm talking about health and fitness, and my podcast is about health and fitness, but let me study the guy who's the top man in health and fitness. And then you say, let me do what he does. And that's when you guys lose that authenticity. Oh, let me do what he does. Okay, he does it like this. He talks like this. This is how he does it. And then you try to become like him, and that's when you ruin everything. So I think the best thing to do is to look in the mirror and say, okay, this is who I am. I'm gonna study outside of my field, which makes me the most interesting guy here to study from because I don't have a podcast. So everything I'm telling you is, I'm not saying I'm the best. Listen to me. What I'm saying is I am different. I'm not doing this, but, you know, I'm not doing it because I'm not cool or whatever. You know, I'm just you know, because I'm cool. I'm not saying I'm not, I don't have a podcast, I'm cool. There you go, I try to get that out. But what I'm saying is, I think if you guys study outside of your field and say, okay, how does this work? How do they promote themselves here? How do they promote themselves there? And use that and take a little bit from that and use it, use that to your advantage, because everybody is in the same field, in the same room, studying the same guy, same person from the same thing, and then everybody looks the same. So I think the way to do it is go the opposite direction, in my opinion.
Jeff, what do you think?
So I think authenticity is certainly important. We talk about it in podcasting. We talk about it in education. I'm the guy that if you want to come on my show, I'll say the same thing to all of my guests, which is this. I've done over 600 episodes. I've never once interviewed anybody. I've always had conversations with them. Because if you say I'm going to interview you, and then I get it, because now I'm interviewing you. I don't want to reference Matt Lauer at this point, but the point is we're having a conversation, and if there's 3 guests, please ask each other questions. And I noticed there was a theme earlier about, are you my guest or are you my co-host? I kind of look at it as you're just on the show. We're all going to have if you want to ask me a question, great, I'll ask you a question. But we're having a conversation with everything. And when you're looking at influencers, I'll be honest. I know I started off by saying I got some of the ideas from Dave, but I'll also be completely honest here. I've never listened to one of Dave's shows. All of the influences that I get from ideas or concepts or tweets. My influences actually come from watching a lot of stand-up. If you want to be a good interviewer, conversator, whatever the word is, I listen to stand-up. I listen to Carlin. I listen to Pryor, Jim Norton, these people. How do you get on stage, start something, and then wind your way around the conversation to get to the end? And you're going from topic to topic to topic. And maybe in the middle of those topics, you listen to somebody who's talking to the audience, which is total improv. Maybe you have your set shtick that you do. But all of, I'm kind of weird in that fact, and I get this question a lot. I don't listen to podcasts. I listen to the guys that are professional speakers, the Tony Robbins, the podcast, not to say that the shows are not there. I'm trying my hardest not to steal from somebody, because I don't want anybody taking our stuff. So, Ask the Podcast Coach turns into Ask the Tech Coach. Yeah. But it's the same idea of be authentic to yourself. Have your own ideas and have your own concepts. And I got that from stand-up comedians. They don't listen they'll support, but they don't want to sit there and say, well, I'm now doing my message because I heard my friend doing it. Yeah. I don't want to get myself into that as a podcaster. But I like you, Dave.
You didn't even listen to the episode you were on?
It was perfect.
That's true. Excellent. The thing...
You did a great job.
The thing I love to talk about having a conversation is I've been interviewed where I know somebody has their 7 questions, and if you ever, I swear I'm going to do this next time, because I could say something like, yes, and my favorite microphone is the ATR 2100, and my father was a space alien, and they would go like, great, and tell us about and they just move on. I swear, the next time somebody does that to me, I'm going to go, and I once shot a man for snoring, just to see if they go to the next question. So be sure to it's not an interrogation. Make it authentic, make it a conversation, and use your questions as a guideline so that when they get done with a question, you're like, wonder what I should ask them next. Oh, here's one. And go that route. Because there are people that just next point.
And to go on that, people sometimes ask me, and corporations ask me this too, what are the questions you are going to ask? I don't know what the question. We're having a good conversation now. I don't pre-plan this. What I say to my guests is, why don't you give me 5 to 10 bullet points? If we get to 5 or 6 of them, that's great. But it's not going to. And I have PR agents that send me, what is your favorite color? How do you get I'm not going to ask these questions. But if you give me bullet points, we can bring topics up.
Yeah, I think it's okay to have outlines of what you do. I mean, I have an outline for this too, and we're not going to stick to it. So it's just the nature of this stuff. It just helps you kind of form your ideas, and then you come up with what you're actually going to do based on what the communications is.
Can I jump on that real quick? Yeah. I had, as a guest on people's podcasts, I had people send me questions. Here's what we're going to ask you. Here's what we're going to say, and here's the questions. I'm like, okay. So I don't even look at them, but it's so robotic when I jump on. It's like, so Anthony, what's your vision? Where you see yourself going? And I say it, And it's like, oh, okay, so next question. It's like, okay, isn't this supposed to be a conversation? Aren't we supposed to just have, like, hang out and chill? We're over here.
I'm also a guest host on a bigger educational podcast. I don't want to bring the name up, but literally it's a 9-minute podcast that they give me the script to read and they give the guest the script to read. And we are literally sitting there as, hi, welcome to the podcast. How are you? And I'm like, it's the hardest show that I get to do, and all I have to do is read it.
That's a whack podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, so if you wanted to ask any questions, feel free to just raise your hand and we can drop it in here. So go ahead.
A lot of people like to ask about promoting their podcast, how do I get more likes, clicks, follows. I feel like the biggest question I see a lot of times is, how do I get people to actually hit play? How do I get people to not just say I'm going to subscribe, but then actually go back and listen to your show for the first time? What is I know everybody's a little bit different, but like, what would you say is some good advice for that conversion?
Learn search engine optimization. A lot of what I do, and I could talk about this for hours, a lot of it is search engine optimization. Not keyword stuff not all that, but most of my audience, I completely understand, is coming from Twitter. To get somebody to find that thing in the stream, click it, go to the post, and then hit it. For me, education's different. His audience is probably coming from iTunes. My audience is coming from Twitter because that's where the professional development comes in. So it's all search engine optimization.
Yeah. If we go back to the 1920s when there was a guy selling newspapers, he wasn't on the corner going, extra, extra, issue number 47, issue number 47. That drives me nuts because nobody cares that it's issue number 47. But if you've got the story that so-and-so embezzled money from such and such. So I see a lot of episode 6, the name of the show, and then the fact that we interviewed Tom Brady or whoever, right? You look at it in iTunes, and all you see is episode 6, name of the show, today we interviewed... And I'm like, put the meat and potatoes at the beginning. That's your headline. And when people see that, they're like, oh my gosh, how to turn dog poop into gold. I am listening to this episode.
And on that, every single podcast that I put out has 5 titles to it. One for iTunes, one for the blog post, one that goes into that other company.
Yeah.
Okay? And I can show you that with later, but because it's all different audiences. So we're educators. We like asking questions. Learn how to do immediate feedback on that.
I say put out content, man, and take out the best. You're asking how to get people to actually listen to the entire thing, right?
Oh, dude. I think there's just a lot of times you put stuff. Facebook is a great example. You boost ads, and people will like it and comment, but when you look at the actual click-through rates, nobody's actually going hitting play.
I think you should put the best. As someone who I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. How many of you guys listen to that? Or no? Is that cool? One man, one dude.
Crazy show.
I listen to that. I see how he puts the best 2 minutes about a certain topic. He'll put it up, and it'll get me to watch the entire show because I'm listening to this 10 minutes or this 7 minute. I'm like, wow, this is pretty good about this topic. And then he'll put another one up. This content, you're taking a 3-hour-long podcast or an hour-long podcast, take the best 2 minutes, the best 3 minutes, the best 6 minutes, put it on Facebook, and put the link right there where people can download it or listen to your stuff, and put out the content out. Put it out. Put it on Instagram. Put it on Facebook. Don't save it for downloads. Put it out, and people will see, wow, this is great. What else is on there? And that's why I click and listen to podcasts.
I mean, it works for Jimmy Fallon. Anybody watch the news? And at about 11:17, Jimmy Fallon pops in, hey, tonight is on the show, we've got Ariana Grande and da 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 da. Tune in tonight. So it's here's the headline, here's why you want to listen. And some people get really nervous and they go, well, what if they don't want to listen to that topic? To which I go, why are you putting out content that your audience doesn't want to hear about? Ooh. Because it's Thursday, and I always put out a show on Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's okay to not put out a show if it's bad. So anyway,
it's a whack podcast.
Yeah, go ahead and ask a question.
I know we talk a lot about style and being authentic, but in terms of substance and getting people to actually move to your website, how vital is it look of your website, since most of the content that you're doing or taking in is audio-based. You've got RSS feeds and all that, and people can find that different podcasts, attachments, and formats to go how vital is the style or look of your actual page.
So here's my recommendation for this, and I talk a lot in philosophy. Stop calling it a website. Okay, I'm going to take the word from Steve Jobs, but I call everything I do on that a digital hub. Everything flows from it. My RSS feed, my social feeds, my contact, my speaker, everything flows from my digital hub. You push everything into that, and you're going to see numbers go up. You're going to see click-throughs. You need to know how to build that mousetrap. And again, that does go back to the SEO. But if you look at it as this is the centralized hub of everything you're doing, yeah, it all matters in there, and it's all there.
I never listened to Joe Rogan. I never watched Joe Rogan's website or seen his website.
That's it. A lot of people will never make it to your website. Yeah. The only time it's important is if you're maybe going for sponsors, because they might not listen to your show, but they're going to probably visit your website first. And when it looks professional, that might help. If you're trying to get people there, I wouldn't recommend doing something that was super visual. But if I'm talking about, I don't know, I'll bring up my cat again, and I say, you should see Bernie, he's got a new red and white striped picture. You know what? Is there a picture of it on the website? And be amazed at when it's an added bonus like, hey, if you like this topic, I've got a video about it on the website, and then make it easy to remember. So I do things like schoolofpodcasting.com/530 is my last episode, so that it's easy to remember, because nobody's listening in front of a computer. They're in their car, they're mowing the lawn, things like that. So if you can make it easy to remember, that might drive people back. Make sure there's a link in your show notes. But in many cases, I'm with him. There are a lot of podcasts I've listened to. I've never been to their website.
Yeah, so your branding on your podcast needs to be really important. It needs to be consistent with your website, and if you have an app or something like that, it just all needs to be consistent. So when a user goes to find your podcast, they see the same kind of visual presentation as they would see if they go to your website. It just needs to be consistent, would be my advice. Yeah, go ahead.
Talk about the difference between, we talked about this last night, more of a personal podcast and the business podcast. And I don't mean you have to be boring. There has to be a different approach. Doing it for your business is I mix podcast and talk about his life.
You mean doing it on behalf of a business?
Sorry?
Doing it on behalf of a business?
Yeah.
Jeff, Mike.
I'm an interior designer, so I'm going to do an interior design podcast. I'm talking about all things interior design. I'm not just talking about my personal. Maybe I'll bring personal stuff into it to make it, I don't want it to be stuffy and boring, but
Is it your business?
it's my business.
Okay. I've made six figures saying the F word, being myself, and attracting to people who are secretly just like me. So if you want to say, what's professional, what's not professional, who's your audience? If you yourself, you attract the people who are just like you, and then what happens? They'll ride with you to the end. That's just the way it is. So I don't know if you're talking about the way you should say what you talk, how to talk should be professional, but I think just being yourself, you attract the listeners that like your stuff. So
I think when you can use a personal story to make your business point, you've hit a home run. So I did an episode when Muhammad Ali died. When I was growing up, there were two things that were constant. Nixon was president and Ali was champ. And I explained that this guy had a serious impact on me, especially when you learn much more about, the guy was so much more than boxing. And I said, here's what podcasters can learn from Muhammad Ali. He was authentic. He stood up for himself. He was definitely an original person. And so it was, here's how, and I had so many people like, I love the champ too. I had a 16-year-old stepson that all he talked about was getting his license. And I said, when you start a podcast, you need the passion of a 16-year-old kid dying to get his license, because that's what you need to get over that hump. So it wasn't sharing something personal. Hey, I had an Egg McMuffin for breakfast today. Who cares? But if it's, McDonald's, as much as you hate their food, they're consistent. Every McDonald's you go to, you get the same Egg McMuffin. Your podcast should be consistent. They should have the same value no matter what episode it is. So if you can bring a personal thing into that, that's how I do it. Jeff, any?
Should you stand for something?
Yeah. Think about
I
it.
think, yeah.
If you look at, oh, God, I don't want to go to Pollock. Let's go Howard Stern. You either love him or you hate him. Right? Because that guy is what he is, and he's polarizing. And if you try to be everything to everybody, you're going to be nothing to everyone. So,
Dave, you briefly mentioned having links in your show notes.
Mhm.
I'd love for you guys to talk.
Yeah.
I want to be that guy.
Thank you. I was saying that Dave briefly mentioned having links in your show notes. And my question is more so about how do you convert your listeners to become customers from like the podcast? I know that you should have like ways for them to opt into your email list. Can you share some creative techniques around that?
Number one, ask. You don't ask for a sale, you don't get it. Number two, this is why podcasting works. I've shared a little bit about myself, so they hopefully like me. I've delivered value, so now you're a trusted friend. And if I can, I do it on a regular basis, so now you seem trustworthy. So I know you, I like you, I trust you. And now when I say, by the way, if you want to start a podcast, blah, 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 there's your call. And that's, you buy people from your friends. You buy things from people, usually your friends. And then for me, I thought it was really weird. One call out action I said is, hey, if you're listening to this, like in the grocery store, Jessica Rhodes, or you're mowing the lawn, Ryan K. Parker, or you're in the car, you're probably thinking, I need to go get those show notes. Just go to school, and I gave my newsletter link. And I was amazed at how many people that worked, because that is their thing. And just, value, and then you got to ask. And that's, for me, I'm a teacher, I'm not a salesman. So I have a hard time. I always feel like I don't want to just ask for the sale.
Yeah, and you're building friends. So when
Yeah.
you speak to your audience, refer to them as individuals is the big thing, too, because it's a personal connection. They're in your ear.
They're giving us the hook.
So I think we're out of time. So if we're going to stay on
Let me take one more.
on time, I know it's up to Joe. Yeah, let me take one more. All right, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to have a brief statement from each of the panelists about the growing divide in the field of podcasting between people who are podcasting for business in terms of the intention to get a customer versus people that are podcasting for passion. Because it seems to me that in the community, we're polarizing, and that it really shouldn't be that we really all have the same goal, but yet we're kind of going about it with our podcast in a different way. That's a little statement.
I think the best podcasters are the ones that come out with passion, those who have passion, because the business ones, everyone is trying to sound like everyone else. Everyone's trying to growth hack. Everybody's like, let me jump on this, guys. Let me jump. And it looks so fake, and they're making $0. So I think the best ones are the passion ones. If you have a passion, those will get more downloads. Those will get more people seeing it. Why? Because you're really excited to get up and talk about the subject that you're passionate about. I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast not because I'm buying something, right? Like I listen to it because I love the conversation. I love what they talk about. I love the side stuff they're saying. Sometimes they don't even speak about anything MMA or nothing like that. They're just talking about, the Illuminati or something that gets me like, okay, I'm laying down, going to sleep, listening to this podcast about nothing, right? Because it's entertainment. So I think the business ones, many of them are just fake, man. They just. A lot of people are just growth hacking in a weird way. It's just, let me jump on this guy. Let me jump on this guy. Oh, my name is this. And it's just... So I think hopefully I answered your question. So it's pretty much...
It's a good question. I'm just kind of taking 30 seconds to reflect on all of this stuff. My mission is very simple with TeacherCast. I'm here to be the conduit between a teacher and the ed tech. You have a question about something, I want to connect you with the person. And no matter what type of show, that could be the teacher that wants to learn about podcasting, so I have Rob come on, and now that's the expert. That's no different than I have a question about something, and I bring the Google guy or the Microsoft guy on the show. It's all about what is your passion, what is your mission, who's your audience. My audience is the interaction between teacher and student. So for that, my audience is a little bit broad with that. Now, I do shows for my love, my passion. My live shows are great. I also do a show that is basically an infomercial. My goal for the next 15 minutes is to sell this thing. I've been doing this for 5 years. A year and a half ago, with the help of this convention, I had to, with the triplets, make the decision to turn TeacherCast a little bit more business. By doing that, and by having some of these philosophies show out through the passions, I am doing more than 6 figures with this show, but that's a lot of. Thank you. But all this comes from, look, if that all went away, I love what I do because I get a chance to help students. If I can help a teacher, I'm helping 30 students. If I can help a principal, that's 500 students. If I can help a superintendent, that's 3,000 students. And that's every single time I turn on the microphone, it's not that. We talk about downloads, and I have one download. No, one download for me could be 5,000 students. So speak your heart no matter what you're doing. The business will come. You do have to declare yourself as a business, or else you're never going to be focused on my time is valuable. But always be passionate about everything. At the end of all of my shows, I say, keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students. It always comes down to just follow your heart, and your audience will follow you.
Yeah, exactly. First of all, if you're focused right now and your podcast isn't launched and you're figuring out how am I going to make money with this, man, you got that so backwards, because you sell to your audience. You don't have an audience. I'm going to repeat that again. You don't have an audience. So you can pitch to, the wall, but the wall isn't going to buy it. You have to get an audience first, gain their trust, get them to know you, get them to like you, then you can sell that. And here's the other thing. I know this is like sacrilege. You don't have to make money with your podcast. One of the coolest things about it is it's global. And if you just want to get your message out and you can't get a slot on the local TV, I had my first voicemail I got was from a guy in Germany on the other side of the planet, was listening to me. I'm sitting next to the water heater in the basement. So, but I see that a lot because we hear about these people that are just crushing it, and that's awesome. But step one is build the audience. Step two, then, is if you want to monetize it. So, and you don't have to monetize. If you're just doing it because I want to talk Formula One with my brothers again, by all means, if that's benefiting your life, do it. If it's not,
and the money will come.
Would that be Drivers on Fire?
No. But anyway,
it's all about
you do
motivation.
The passion, man. The money will come.
It's all about motivation. Yeah. And podcasting is about being original and teaching and communicating, and making money from it usually comes later. So, well, thank you guys. Thanks, thanks, Jeff.
Jeff had a great point. Notice he said, and he turned it into a business after 5 years, not 5 episodes, 5 years.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, and thank you.
Guys.
I think it's lunchtime. Is that right? No. Food.
Nope. Thank you all. Thank you so much for the awesome knowledge. Thanks for not dropping the mic. It's much appreciated.